here we are today. Today we're going to try to make a plate that fits down in the frame so we can actually set the motor down in there to see what we got to cut loose on the side of this frame to get everything to fit right. So that's today's goal, is to get that in there. One last good look at the tractor before we start doing everything. We have to take all this assembly off here for the starter, but we'll do that after we get the frame thing cut out. The Cub Cadet 1222. She's going to be a mighty fine tractor. All right, we're going to take this this motor and move it out of here. Take these engine rails out, I reckon. I might have a change in plan here. I got to think about this. I got engine mount plates. Look at these here. I don't know if they'll let that Predator engine sit down in there far enough and move it over here. And you can see we got this one and this one. But they're within a ½ inch, maybe less, of letting that engine sit all the way down. And I don't know if we need it that far. So have to think about it. I need to get a measuring tape. Be right back. All right, so what we're gonna do is so if you take in count with the pipe, we got 4 inches from this drive shaft to this plate. And this plate will be similar to what we're going to mount the engine on. Now we got to find out how far the Predator motor is from the bottom of the engine to the shaft. In order to do that, we're going to have to take this cover off. Well, actually, we can use this center piece right there as the way to measure. Let's see how far off the floor. All right, so it's 5.5 inches from the bottom of the engine to the center of the crankshaft. Four and a half. So we got to find out if we can drop that down an inch. If we don't, we're going to have to replace that with a real drive shaft with universal joints and all that stuff. So we try to take these engine mounts out. all this back together. So if I ever need it again, all the bolts and stuff are right there on it. A little nut I thought I lost. Found it. So all the nuts are clamped back on here in case I ever need it again. junk laying in there. Okay. Now we got all that kind of cleaned out. We'll take a small break and see if we can get light over here. Alright, I'll show y'all what's going on. This is the kind of plate we're going to put down, but it's only about 4.5 inches. Go for the bottom. So we're an inch and a half. We're an inch and a half to tall. So that means we're going to have to build an actual drive shaft. So that the U-joints can take up the difference. So look at here. So the other possibility is mounting the plate under. We don't know if the engine bolts. The mounting plate comes up to here. Back this up a little bit so y'all can see. There is this plate right here is a steering plate. It cannot be moved. Got plenty of bolt hole rooms, and they do line up to where you can put a bolt through there for that engine or any engine. So got a 1/2 inch. So what we really got to do now is we got to take this engine and see what has to be removed to get it to sit on that plate. So let's move you guys back so we can. Now let's try to set this engine. give me a good plate. Set everything on. Pretty sure I'm going to take the starter off and the oil filter. What I'm going to do now, measure to the top of this frame is 4 inches. Measure to the bottom of the oil filter. And 3 3/4. So the oil filter does have to move. That means it's got to take a little notch out of there. Not a very good one. There's no way to get that out. Let me pause and see if I can get a way to wrench that off there. Alright folks, I had to run up to the hardware store, or the AutoZone, to get a small enough oil filter wrench. So we're going to take this oil filter off to prevent damage, and also to be able to set this engine down in here. That ain't gonna work. Man, they put that sucker on there good. About destroyed it getting it off of here. That was tough. Scarred it up pretty bad. Next goal is to get this started off. Alright, now we gotta get this starter off here. First we gotta take this ignition stuff off. Or at least get it out of the way. So before we use these, just put these back in. This one goes in here. And this one goes up here. Looks like we got two more brackets. One back to the two. Apparently the starter didn't come off as easy as I thought it would. Gonna have to probably take this cover off. Yeah, shoot. I'm gonna take this cover off because you gotta take it off anyway, but I think it'll give me a better shot of looking. See what's holding the starter in there. All right, I found the screwdriver. Got to make a special note that these two go right through this holder right here, so that I know that they were in there. So now the last thing we got to do is we got to remove this engine mount. To get this last piece of plastic off of here. Now that I've removed that, I'm going to put this engine mount back on so that we don't lose these bolts. Okay, the engine mount is on. Okay, so we're going to back this up a little bit. So there's our engine trailer. Okay, we're going to put these stud caps back on. These are the caps came off these studs. Don't want to lose them. For example, I think I've already lost one. There's the last one. So we put everything back on. And it says connect the positive cable here. I have no idea where it came from. So, set that to the side. Alright, so now let's find out why this starter won't come. Looks to me like it's still connected. Slide that out. Slide this out. Say it, but this plate right here looks like it needs to come off, and I hope there's not a bolt behind any of that. So what we're going to do, we're going to slide the engine back up. We'll set it back on this piece of aluminum here. Why this starter won't come off of here. There's got to be a reason. Bolt. So maybe 3 bolts will take this plate off. It looks like 2 bolts will take the plate off. This plate go back there. Oh man, that plate wraps around, so that's not gonna work. This shield is all one part. This shield and this shield wraps up here. Surely they didn't make a got these little wires here. What we want to do is find out if they come apart like that. Make sure there's no duplicate colors, so all the colors match up with colors match up. Very difficult to get off of there. Good thing they're in there tight. Got to find some needle nose pliers. I'll be right back. Alright, found some needle nose. Makes it a lot easier. Get these wires apart. The only one we can't take off is this one. This white wire here has to be on both. So when I put it back on, I got to know if this white wire goes to the solenoid. And there's the starter. Now, technically, we can lift this engine up and set it down in there. I'm going to reposition the camera. All right, here to go. Wish me luck. I'm going to lift it up, take this plate out, and see see if this engine will drop down in here. That engine is setting in there. Let's take the camera loose. Alright, so the engine is sitting on these plates, temp plates I put in here. Don't think I got room for an alternator built. PTO shaft seems to be in the right place. PTO shaft has to line up with that line right there. That's where the pulleys actually go, so it fits perfect. The only problem we have is we're not going to be able to get a pulley on here and the belt across these. It'll hit that one. So we'll put the alternator on this side. As far as this drive shaft goes, put the camera in here. We're not far from the center. That big bolt is the center. But it is enough to where I think we need an actual drive shaft. I'm not sure. But the engine does sit in here. This oil line might be sitting on there. Let's check that up a little bit just to make sure it's not sitting. Yeah, that oil line right there seems to be hitting. So we're going to jack it up and see if I can get you a better shot. This oil line right here seems to be hitting. I'm going to lower the engine down. So we're not going to let it sit like that overnight. I'm going to jack it up with that plate back under it. So we got to cut out a spot right there for the oil filter and that line. So it looks like we have to come down to maybe an inch or two cut out that. Let's see on the other side. For that starter to fit, I don't know. Might have to cut out a space for that. Anyway, that's next weekend's project, is to start designing a drive shaft, a pulley, and a permanent plate for the bottom, which what we're going to do is we're going to bolt the engine to the plate and then bolt the plate down to the rails down there. So you can see over here where the plate sits on the frame right there. We'll bolt the engine to there, and then we'll bolt the plates down to the frame. That's going to be the pattern we do. And then we got to find a way. We're either going to take a grinder and grind out parts, or we'll get a plasma cutter. But that's all we're going to do for today, folks. It sits in there. I'm afraid to let it sit all the way down because of the oil line. What I might do is put a plate down on there so that we can lower it in there. Let's try that. Let's jack this sucker up. Let's see if I can slide a plate over there. Be right back. All right, folks. I gotta go. But there she is. Sit down in there, and next week we'll do the starting the marking and the cutting, and then after that we'll do the fabricating. But it's time for me to go home. Glad y'all watch these videos. I've noticed there's 100 people on each video we've made, so I hope y'all stick all the way to the end. We'll see y'all next weekend.